The rain pounded against the window like tiny fists demanding entry, matching the thundering of my heart as I paced the cramped studio apartment. My daughter Lily slept peacefully in her crib, her soft breaths a stark contrast to my ragged ones. At 25, I never imagined I'd be a single mother with mounting debts, working 2 jobs and still barely making ends meet. "It's just you and me, baby girl," I whispered, gently tucking her pink blanket around her chubby legs. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen illuminating with a notification from the hospital where I worked as a nurse's aide during the day. Another shift canceled. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the ancient springs protesting under my weight. The eviction notice on my fridge seemed to glow in the darkness, 7 days to pay or get out. The clock read 5:30 a.m. In an hour, I'd need to drop Lily at Mrs. Patel's apartment downstairs before heading to my morning shift at Bellini's, the upscale Italian restaurant where I waited tables. The pay was terrible, but the tips sometimes made the difference between eating and going hungry. The restaurant sat nestled in the heart of North Beach, San Francisco's Little Italy, an establishment as old as the neighborhood's connection to certain family businesses. Everyone knew Bellini's was a favorite meeting spot for important men who spoke in hushed tones, but I kept my head down and my eyes averted. In my 6 months working there, I'd learned the cardinal rule: see nothing, hear nothing, remember nothing. When I arrived that morning, Paolo, the manager, pulled me aside. His perpetually sweaty face looked more anxious than usual. "Listen, Emma, I need you to take the private dining room today." Francesca called in sick. He dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief. My stomach dropped. "The private room? But I've never—" "Just don't screw up." He shoved a crisp white apron into my hands. "Mr. Vitale is coming in, you understand? Mr. Vitale." The way he said the name made my skin prickle. Everyone knew who Alessio Vitale was, even if they pretended not to. His family had controlled the city's underworld for generations, though nowadays their businesses presented a legitimate facade. Real estate, import, export, nightclubs, all gleaming veneers for whatever lay beneath. Just serve efficiently and disappear. Don't make eye contact. Don't listen to the conversations. Got it? Paolo's fingers dug into my arm. I nodded, swallowing hard. Got it. The private dining room was like entering another world. Crystal chandeliers, dark mahogany panels, and windows overlooking the bay. I busied myself arranging the table settings, hands trembling slightly as I aligned each fork and knife with precision. At precisely noon, the door opened. 2 men in dark suits entered first, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Behind them came a woman in a sleek business dress, tablet in hand. And then, he walked in. Alessio Vitale didn't look like what I expected. There was no flash, no ostentation. His suit was immaculately tailored but understated, dark gray with the faintest pinstripe. No jewelry except a simple platinum watch. His hair, black with the first hints of silver at the temples, was cut close and neat. But it was his presence that filled the room. Something in the way he moved, deliberate and contained, like a predator conserving energy. I kept my eyes down as they took their seats, but I could feel his gaze sweeping over me, taking inventory in the span of a heartbeat. He was maybe 40, with features that seemed carved from stone. High cheekbones, a straight nose, and a mouth that looked like it rarely smiled. When he spoke to his associates, his voice was surprisingly soft, with the barest hint of an Italian accent. "The 97 Brunello, please," he instructed, not looking up as I approached with water. I nodded and turned to leave when disaster struck. My foot caught on the plush carpet, sending me stumbling forward. The water pitcher tilted in slow motion, its contents arcing through the air and landing with devastating precision on Mr. Vitale's lap. The room went deadly silent. The 2 men flanking him half rose from their seats, hands moving instinctively toward their jackets. The woman with the tablet froze mid-type. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, horrified. "I'll get towels right away." I turned to flee, but his voice stopped me. "What's your name?" Slowly, I turned back, finally meeting his eyes directly. They were a deep brown, almost black, and completely unreadable. No anger, no irritation, just assessment. "Emma," I whispered. Emma Collins. He nodded slightly, then dismissed me with a flick of his fingers. I escaped, heart pounding in my ears, convinced I'd be fired before the end of my shift, but I wasn't. When the party left 3 hours later, Paolo informed me with evident surprise that Mr. Vitale had specifically requested me as his server for his weekly business lunches going forward. Whatever you did, he liked it, Paolo muttered, clearly mystified. Don't question good fortune. Over the following weeks, I served Mr. Vitale and his rotating cast of associates every Thursday at noon. He rarely acknowledged me beyond necessary requests, but I could feel his attention when my back was turned. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with a calculating expression that made my pulse quicken. One Thursday, as I cleared his table after the others had left, he finally spoke directly to me. You have another job. It wasn't a question. I paused, plate in hand. Yes, sir, at Mercy General. And a child. My blood ran cold. How did he know about Lily? I'd been careful never to mention her at work. He must have read the fear on my face because something almost like amusement flickered in his eyes. The formula stain on your sleeve. The dark circles under your eyes. The way you check your phone whenever you think no one is looking. I couldn't decide what was more unnerving. That he'd noticed these details, or that he'd bothered to interpret them. She's 15 months old, I admitted, seeing no point in denying it. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this confirmation. Her father? Not in the picture. The practiced lie slipped out automatically. The truth was far more complicated and dangerous. Mr. Vitale studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and extracted an envelope, sliding it across the table toward me. What's this? I asked, not touching it. Your previous address was in Parkside. Now you're in the Tenderloin, a downgrade, especially for a child. A chill ran through me. Have you been investigating me? His expression remained impassive. I make it my business to know who serves me food and drink, Ms. Collins. I don't want your money, I said, even as my mind screamed at me to take it, to solve the looming eviction crisis. It's not charity. It's an investment. In what? Let's call it goodwill. He stood, buttoning his jacket with a practiced motion. The envelope contains an address. A building I own in North Beach has a vacant 2-bedroom apartment. It's yours. Rent-controlled, if you want it. The keys are inside. I stared at him, speechless. Why would you do this for me? You don't know me. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Perhaps I simply dislike seeing talent wasted. You're clearly intelligent, hardworking, and resourceful. Qualities I value. Before I could respond, he continued. The offer expires tomorrow. Good day, Miss Collins. I stood frozen as he left, the envelope burning a hole in my apron pocket. Later that night, after putting Lily to bed in our tiny apartment with the perpetually leaking ceiling, I opened it. Inside was a set of keys and an address in one of the safest neighborhoods in the city. Also, a check that would cover moving expenses, and then some. I knew I should tear it all up. Nothing came free from men like Alessio Vitale. Yet as I heard the couple next door begin another screaming match, as the pipes in the bathroom groaned ominously, as I gazed at my daughter sleeping peacefully, unaware of our precarious situation, I found myself wondering what exactly this investment would cost me. The next day, I called the number on the business card that had accompanied the keys. A property manager answered, confirming that everything was in order for my move the following weekend. Just like that. As though Alessio Vitale waving his hand could solve problems that had been crushing me for months. It should have been a relief. Instead, as I hung up the phone, a sense of foreboding settled over me. I just tied myself to a man who people crossed once and only once. And the real terror lay in knowing that the secret I kept, the true identity of Lily's father, would be a betrayal Alessio Vitale would never forgive. Because Lily's father wasn't just not in the picture as I'd claimed. He was Antonio Ricci, Vitale's former right-hand man, who had stolen millions before disappearing 18 months ago. The man whose betrayal had become legendary in whispered conversations throughout the city. The man who had seduced me, used me, and abandoned me once he got what he wanted. And now, unwittingly, I had placed Lily and myself directly under the watchful eye of the most dangerous man in San Francisco. The very man who had sworn to destroy anything and everything Antonio Ricci had ever cared about. I looked down at my sleeping daughter, her features so like her father's, and a cold dread washed over me. What had I done? The new apartment was nothing short of miraculous. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and fresh paint. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances, and the bathroom featured a tub deep enough to actually soak in. But the most beautiful sight was Lily's room, spacious, with built-in bookshelves and a window seat overlooking a small courtyard garden. "Ba ba ba," Lily babbled happily as she crawled across the floor, exploring her new domain. At 15 months, she was just beginning to pull herself up on furniture, her dark curls bouncing with each determined movement. Those curls. Antonio's curls. Every time I looked at her, I saw him. The same olive skin, the same dimple in her left cheek, the same expressive eyebrows. It was terrifying how genetics could betray you. I hadn't known who Antonio really was when I met him. He'd introduced himself as a business consultant at a hospital fundraiser where I was working extra hours as a server. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my nursing studies and ambitions. 3 months of whirlwind romance later, I was pregnant, and Antonio was gone, vanished without a word. His phone disconnected, his apartment emptied. It was only afterward, when I saw his face on the news, Antonio Ricci, suspected of embezzling millions from his employer's legitimate businesses and underground operations, that I understood. The timing made a sickening kind of sense. He'd disappeared right around the time I'd told him about the pregnancy. Now, as I unpacked our meager belongings in this beautiful apartment, I wondered how long I could keep Lily's parentage a secret. In certain lights, when she smiled a certain way, the resemblance to Antonio was undeniable. If Alessio Vitale ever saw it, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "Dinner, tonight, 8 p.m. Car will collect you at 7:30, no signature needed." Only one person would send such a command disguised as an invitation. I checked the time. Barely 3 hours to find childcare and prepare. My hands trembled as I called Mrs. Patel, who thankfully agreed to watch Lily. At precisely 7:30, a sleek black Audi pulled up outside. The driver, a stone-faced man in a suit, opened the rear door without speaking. I slid into the back seat, smoothing down the only decent dress I owned, a simple black sheath that had seen better days. We drove to Russian Hill, stopping before a fortress-like mansion with a spectacular view of the bay. Security cameras tracked our approach, and 2 men flanked the massive front door. They nodded to the driver, but watched me with suspicious eyes as I was escorted inside. The interior was a study in restrained luxury. No gaudy displays of wealth, just impeccable taste and quality in every detail. I was led through a series of rooms to a private dining area, where Alessio Vitale stood gazing out floor-to-ceiling windows at the glittering city below. "Ms. Collins." He turned, his dark eyes appraising me with that same unnerving intensity. "You look well." "Thank you for the apartment," I said, deciding directness was my best approach. "It's beautiful, but I need to understand what this arrangement entails." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Straight to business. I appreciate that." He gestured to the table, set for 2 with fine china and crystal. "Please sit." A server appeared silently, pouring wine and delivering the first course. I waited until we were alone again before speaking. "Mr. Vitale." "Alessio," he corrected, his voice soft but allowing no argument. "Alessio," I amended, the name feeling dangerous on my tongue. "I'm grateful for your generosity, but I'm also concerned about what you expect in return." He took a measured sip of wine, watching me over the rim of his glass. "What do you think I expect, Emma?" The way he said my name sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's what worries me. I'm not in the habit of forcing women into my bed, if that's your concern." His bluntness made me flush. "When I want something, I make it clear." "Then what do you want from me?" He set down his glass precisely. "Information, perhaps. Loyalty, certainly. Your presence at events when required. Nothing onerous." Events? I echoed. I have business associates who bring their wives and girlfriends. A man alone draws unnecessary speculation. Understanding dawned. You want me to pose as your companion? Among other things. His gaze was clinical. You're intelligent, presentable, and seemingly adaptable. You need financial stability and a safe environment for your child. I can provide both. And if I refuse? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. The apartment is yours regardless. I'm not a monster, Emma, but I think you'll find my offer more beneficial than your current prospects. The calculated practicality of it all was somehow more unnerving than if he'd made cruder demands. This was a business transaction to him, one where he held all the power. What about my job at the restaurant, at the hospital? Keep them for now if you wish, though I suspect your hospital position might better align with your training if certain barriers were removed. At my startled look, he added, Your supervisor mentioned your interrupted nursing education. A shame. The casual reminder that he'd been investigating my life made my skin crawl. My daughter comes first, I said firmly. Any arrangement would have to accommodate that. He inclined his head slightly. Children need stability and security. I would never interfere with that. The irony nearly choked me if he knew whose child I was raising. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. He signaled, and the server reappeared with the main course. Enjoy your dinner. We can discuss details later. The meal continued with Alessio skillfully steering the conversation to neutral topics, my background in Pennsylvania, my nursing interests, even favorite books. He was surprisingly well-read, with insights that revealed a sharp, analytical mind. Despite my wariness, I found myself engaged in the discussion, occasionally forgetting who I was dining with until some subtle reminder. The deference of the staff, the glimpse of a shoulder holster beneath a guard's jacket, brought reality crashing back. After dinner, he showed me through the house to a terrace overlooking the city. The night air was cool, and I wrapped my arms around myself. Without a word, he removed his jacket and placed it over my shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body, carrying a subtle scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him, like cedar and spice. Your daughter, he said suddenly. What's her name? Lily, I answered, tension coiling through me at the mention of her. After someone? My grandmother, I lied. In truth, Antonio had once mentioned liking the name during one of our few personal conversations. Alessio nodded, seemingly satisfied. And her father? You said he's not involved. My heart stuttered. He left when I told him I was pregnant. A coward, then. If only it were that simple. Yes. He turned to face me fully, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I dislike lies, Emma. In my world, dishonesty has consequences. I'm not lying, I said, too quickly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We all lie sometimes. The question is whether the truth eventually surfaces. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face with a touch so light I barely felt it. And it always does. The drive home was silent, my mind racing through the evening's implications. When we reached my apartment, the driver opened my door and handed me a small box before departing. Inside my new home, I opened it with trembling fingers. A cell phone, sleek and obviously expensive, with a single number programmed into it. On the home screen was a message, for when I need you. That night, I barely slept, alternating between checking on Lily and staring at the ceiling. I'd made a deal with a devil who didn't yet realize how completely I was betraying him simply by existing, by raising Antonio's child under his protection. The next morning, I called the hospital and requested a meeting with the nursing director. Somehow, I wasn't surprised to learn that an anonymous donor had established a scholarship that would cover the remainder of my nursing degree, including childcare stipends during clinical rotations. When I asked who to thank, the director smiled. The donor specified that the recipient should have shown dedication and resilience in the face of obstacles. You were specifically nominated. So it began. My life quickly divided into compartments. Nurse in training by day, occasional companion to Alessio Vitale by night, and mother to Lily in every moment between. Weeks passed, then months. Gradually, the arrangement settled into a rhythm that began to feel almost normal. Alessio was true to his word. He never made inappropriate advances, or demanded more than my presence and conversation. At business dinners, I played my part, smiling, engaging in small talk with wives and girlfriends of his associates, absorbing the subtle power dynamics at play. I learned which men Alessio trusted and which he merely tolerated. I noticed how conversations shifted when certain topics arose, and how Alessio controlled every room with minimal effort. He was unfailingly polite, even considerate in his way. Gifts appeared. A designer dress before an important event, a cashmere wrap when he noticed me shivering at an outdoor reception, books related to discussions we'd had. Never jewelry or anything too personal. Always practical, always with plausible deniability. And yet, there were moments. A hand placed possessively at the small of my back. A lingering glance, the way he sometimes watched me when he thought I wouldn't notice, that suggested he might want more than our carefully negotiated arrangement. What terrified me most was how easily I could imagine giving it to him. Because the truth, the shameful, dangerous truth, was that I was beginning to see past the feared Mafia boss to the man beneath. The man who remembered details about my studies and asked insightful questions. The man who sent his personal physician when Lily had a high fever one night. The man whose rare, genuine smiles transformed his severe features into something unexpectedly compelling. I was walking a tightrope above an abyss, and I couldn't afford to look down. Until one evening, 6 months into our arrangement, when everything unraveled with horrifying speed, Alessio had asked me to attend a gallery opening. The event ran late, and when his driver returned me home, I invited Alessio up for coffee, something I'd never done before. Mrs. Patel had agreed to stay overnight with Lily, so I thought it safe enough. I never expected Lily to wake, to toddle sleepily from her bedroom rubbing her eyes, her hair mussed from sleep. "Mama?" she called, spotting me in the living room. I froze, watching in helpless horror as Alessio turned toward the sound. His dark eyes widened almost imperceptibly as they fixed on my daughter's face, on the features that so clearly announced her parentage to anyone who had known Antonio Ricci well. And no one had known Antonio better than his boss. In that moment, seeing recognition dawn in Alessio's expression, I knew my carefully constructed world was about to shatter. Time seemed to stop as Alessio's gaze moved from Lily to me, his expression shifting from surprise to cold calculation. I lunged forward, scooping Lily into my arms and holding her protectively against my chest. "It's late, sweetie," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Let's get you back to bed." Mrs. Patel appeared in the hallway, apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Emma." She woke up and slipped past me when I was in the bathroom. "It's fine," I managed, not daring to look at Alessio. "Would you mind taking her back to her room? I'll be there in a minute." As Mrs. Patel led Lily away, I steeled myself and turned to face Alessio. His expression had hardened into something terrifying, a cold, lethal stillness that reminded me exactly who he was. Antonio's child. His voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "You've been raising Antonio Ricci's daughter under my protection." It wasn't a question. There was no point in denial. "Yes," I whispered. In one fluid motion, he was across the room, his fingers gripping my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Do you have any idea what that man did?" "He stole from you," I said, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. "I saw it on the news." Alessio's laugh was harsh and without humor. "The money was nothing, a minor inconvenience." His grip tightened. "He betrayed my trust. He gave information to my enemies that got 3 of my men killed. Good men, with families." Horror washed over me. This was worse than I'd imagined. "I didn't know," I breathed. "I swear to you, I didn't know who he really was until after he disappeared. And yet you kept his child." His eyes searched mine, looking for something I couldn't identify. "Why?" "You could have terminated the pregnancy when you learned the truth. She's innocent," I said fiercely. "Whatever Antonio did, Lily bears no responsibility. She's my daughter." Something flickered in his eyes, respect, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement of my conviction. "How much did you know about his plans?" he demanded. "Nothing. He told me he was a business consultant. We only dated for 3 months before I got pregnant." Then he vanished. Tears of frustration burned my eyes. I never heard from him again. I didn't even know his real name until I saw his face on the news. Alessio released me and stepped back, his expression unreadable. Did he ever contact you after he disappeared? Never. And now? Does he know about his daughter? I shook my head. How could he? He left before she was born. Alessio turned away, pacing the small living room like a caged predator. The tension radiating from him was palpable, dangerous. I should have seen it, he muttered, almost to himself. The resemblance is clear now that I've seen her. Those eyes, that dimple. He stopped suddenly, fixing me with a penetrating stare. Did you plan this? Get close to me as some sort of insurance policy against Antonio's enemies? No. The accusation stung. I had no idea who you were when I started working at Bellini's. It was just a job that paid decent tips. And when you offered the apartment, I swallowed hard. I was desperate. We were about to be evicted. I knew it was risky to accept anything from you, but for Lily's sake, I took the chance. A mother's sacrifice, he said, his tone impossible to interpret. How touching. I lifted my chin. Mock me if you want, but it's the truth. Everything I've done has been to protect her and give her a better life than I had. Alessio studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and withdrew his phone. My blood ran cold as he dialed, his eyes never leaving mine. Marco, he said into the receiver. I need a full background check on Emma Collins. Everything. Bank records, phone logs, email, social media. Past and present connections to Antonio Ricci. Yes, Ricci. His mouth curved into a grim smile at whatever the person on the other end said. No, she's not to be touched. Not yet, just information. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. You understand, I need to verify your story. I nodded numbly. What happens now? Now? He glanced toward the hallway where Lily had disappeared. Now you put your daughter to bed properly. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow. And then? His expression was chillingly neutral. That depends entirely on what I discover about you, Emma. After he left, I rushed to Lily's room, gathering her into my arms and sobbing quietly into her curls as she slept, oblivious to the danger we were in. I considered running, packing our things and disappearing in the night. But I knew it was futile. Alessio's reach was too extensive, his resources too vast. We wouldn't make it out of the city. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, convinced each creak was someone coming to take Lily away, or worse. By morning, exhaustion had crystallized into a strange, cold resolve. I called in sick to both jobs, sent Mrs. Patel home with profuse thanks, and waited. Alessio arrived just after 9, alone this time, dressed in a casual black sweater and dark jeans that somehow made him look even more intimidating than his usual suits. He carried a manila folder under one arm. You look terrible, he observed, closing the door behind him. Funny how the threat of having your child taken tends to interfere with sleep, I replied, beyond caring about diplomacy. He raised an eyebrow. I never threatened to take your child. Didn't you? Without answering, he placed the folder on the coffee table and sat on my sofa, gesturing for me to join him. When I remained standing, he sighed. Emma, if I intended to harm you or Lily, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Sit down. Reluctantly, I perched on the edge of the armchair across from him. What's in the folder? Your life. He opened it, revealing pages of documents, or at least the verifiable parts. Birth certificate from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Mother deceased when you were 12. My condolences. Father unknown. Foster care until 18. Nursing scholarship to UCSF. Interrupted when your savings were depleted. Various jobs since then. He flipped through more pages. A remarkable lack of social media presence. No criminal record. No suspicious financial transactions. You sound disappointed, I said. His mouth quirked slightly. Surprised, perhaps. I expected to find some connection to Antonio beyond your brief relationship. There isn't one. So it seems. He studied me intently. My men tracked your movements for the past year. Your routine is monotonously consistent. Work, childcare, home, occasionally the park or grocery store. No suspicious meetings, no coded communications. Because I'm telling the truth. I said, frustration mounting. I was a convenient distraction for Antonio, nothing more. He never cared about me or the baby. Alessio's expression shifted subtly. And yet you kept his child, raised her alone, despite the hardship. She's my daughter, I said simply. He closed the folder and leaned back, his dark eyes never leaving my face. There's still the matter of your deception. I didn't deceive you. You never asked who Lily's father was. Not specifically. A lie of omission is still a lie, Emma. His voice was dangerously soft. Especially when you knew exactly who I was and what Antonio meant to me. I swallowed hard. What are you going to do? For a long moment he was silent, considering. Then he said, Nothing has changed. What? The arrangement stands. You will continue your studies. You will accompany me when required. You and Lily will remain in this apartment. I stared at him, confused. I don't understand. Why would you still want me around after this? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Perhaps I'm not ready to relinquish what's mine. I'm not yours, I said automatically, even as a shiver ran through me. His smile was cold. Aren't you? You live in my building. You attend school on my scholarship. You wear dresses I've provided to events where you're perceived as my companion. He leaned forward slightly. Your entire life now exists because I allow it to. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. I had become dependent on him, trapped in a gilded cage of my own making. There are conditions, of course, he continued. Lily will have security, discreet, but constant. You will not leave the city without my knowledge and permission, and you will tell me immediately if Antonio ever contacts you. He won't, I said. We'll see. He stood, buttoning his jacket with that same practiced motion I'd observed countless times. One more thing, Emma. From now on, no more lies between us, not even small ones. After he left, I sat motionless, trying to process what had just happened. Against all odds, we were safe. For now. But the price was complete submission to Alessio's control, a deeper entanglement with a man I should have been desperately trying to escape. The weeks that followed settled into a new normal that was both familiar and fundamentally changed. True to his word, Alessio maintained our arrangement, but with subtle differences. The security he mentioned materialized as a friendly doorman, who I quickly realized never left his post, and a nanny he suggested for days when Mrs. Patel was unavailable, a capable young woman named Sophia, who I suspected had combat training. Alessio himself began to appear more frequently in our lives. He would stop by the apartment unannounced, ostensibly to check on his investment. Sometimes he brought gifts for Lily, educational toys, or books that were always age-appropriate and tasteful. He never tried to engage with her directly, maintaining a careful distance, but I would catch him watching her with an inscrutable expression. Once, I returned from the kitchen to find him examining a photo of Lily on her first birthday. She has his eyes, he said without looking up. But her smile is yours. I didn't know how to respond to these moments of unexpected insight. It was easier when he was simply the intimidating crime boss, not this more complex figure who noticed the smallest details about my daughter. Meanwhile, Lily was growing rapidly, her vocabulary expanding daily. She had just turned 2, and her personality was emerging, stubborn, curious, with a mischievous streak that both exhausted and delighted me. She had no fear of Alessio, despite his formidable presence, and would sometimes toddle up to him with a book or toy, babbling in her toddler language. The first time it happened, I tensed, ready to intervene, but Alessio surprised me. He crouched down to her level, examined the toy car she was offering, and said with complete seriousness, "Thank you, Lily. It's an excellent vehicle." She beamed at him and went back to her play area, satisfied with the interaction. When Alessio rose, I caught a fleeting expression on his face, something almost like pain, before his usual mask slipped back into place. That night, after Lily was asleep, he lingered longer than usual, accepting the glass of wine I offered. We sat in companionable silence for a while before he spoke. "I had a daughter once," he said, his voice so low I almost missed it. She would be about 12 now. The revelation stunned me, In all our conversations, he had never mentioned family beyond the vaguest references to his parents. "What happened?" I asked softly. His gaze remained fixed on his wine glass. "Car accident. She and her mother were hit by a drunk driver. Sophia died instantly. Lucia lingered for 3 days before her injuries proved too severe." "I'm so sorry," I whispered, genuinely moved by this glimpse of old pain. "It was a long time ago." He took a measured sip of wine, "before I took over the family business from my father. Something clicked into place. Is that why you helped us? Because of your daughter?" His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. "I don't analyze my motivations, Emma. It's an inefficient use of time." But I'd glimpsed something in that moment. A vulnerability that humanized him in a way nothing else had. It didn't excuse who he was or what he did, but it helped me understand him better. As the months passed, our lives became increasingly intertwined. Alessio began including me in more private settings, dinners at his home rather than business functions, evenings at the opera or symphony where we weren't surrounded by his associates. Sometimes he would bring work to my apartment, spreading papers across my dining table after Lily was asleep, asking my opinion on legitimate business matters as I studied for nursing exams. It was during one such evening, nearly a year after the night he discovered Lily's parentage, that everything changed again. I had just put Lily to bed after her bath, her damp curls clinging to her forehead as I tucked her in. At almost 3, she was speaking in complete sentences now, her personality more defined with each passing day. "Mama," she said sleepily as I kissed her forehead. "Is Alessio staying for breakfast?" I stilled. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because Daddy and my books make pancakes for breakfast." My blood ran cold. "Alessio isn't your daddy, Lily." She frowned, confused. "But he takes care of us like daddies do, and he looks at you like Tommy's daddy looks at Tommy's mommy." Out of the mouths of babes. I smoothed her hair, buying time to formulate a response. "It's complicated, sweetie. Alessio is a friend who helps us." "Okay," she said, already drifting toward sleep. "I like him. He's not scary like the other men." I kissed her again and quietly left the room, only to find Alessio standing in the hallway, his expression making it clear he had overheard every word. The papers he'd been reviewing dangled forgotten from one hand. "Alessio," I began, not even sure what I was going to say. He silenced me with a gesture, then walked past me into the living room. I followed, heart pounding. "She's confused," I said quickly. "Children her age try to categorize relationships based on what they see in books and stop." His voice was quiet, but carried such authority that I immediately fell silent. He set the papers down carefully on the coffee table, his back to me. "How long has she been thinking this way?" "I don't know. This is the first time she said anything like that." He turned, his expression unreadable. "And what did you tell her about her real father?" "Nothing yet. She's too young to understand." "But you will tell her eventually." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted, "when she's old enough. She deserves to know the truth." "The truth," he repeated, an edge entering his voice. "That her father was a traitor who cared so little for her that he abandoned her before she was born? I don't know what I'll tell her," I said honestly. "I just know I won't lie." He moved closer, his proximity sending my pulse racing. "And what about me, Emma? What am I to her in this truthful future you envision?" I met his gaze steadily. "I don't know that either." Something shifted in his eyes, a decision made, a barrier crossed. "Perhaps," he said softly, "it's time we clarified exactly what I am to both of you." His words hung in the air between us, laden with implications I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Alessio stepped closer, eliminating the safe distance I'd always maintained between us. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think you know," he replied, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "This arrangement of ours has evolved beyond its original parameters." My heart thundered in my chest. "Alessio, let me finish." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "For the past year, I've told myself this was about control, about keeping Antonio's child close. ensuring he had nothing left to come back for if he ever resurfaced. I flinched at the casual cruelty of the statement, but he continued. I was lying to myself. His hand cupped my cheek, the warmth of his palm sending an involuntary shiver through me. It stopped being about Antonio months ago. Then what is it about? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Instead of replying, he closed the final distance between us, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was surprisingly gentle, almost questioning. When I didn't pull away, his arms encircled me, drawing me against the solid warmth of his chest. I should have resisted. Everything about this moment represented another dangerous entanglement with a man who lived by his own moral code, who had built an empire on violence and fear. Yet as his kiss deepened, I found myself responding, my arms winding around his neck, surrendering to feelings I'd been denying for longer than I cared to admit. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, I saw something in his eyes I'd never witnessed before. Vulnerability, mingled with a fierce possessiveness that should have terrified me, but instead sent heat coursing through my veins. "This is complicated," I said, stating the obvious. His mouth curved in a rare, genuine smile. "Most worthwhile things are. Lily adores you and feels safe with me." His expression grew serious. "I would never come between you. You must know that by now." Did I? Despite everything, despite the year of witnessing his unexpected consideration toward Lily, his respect for my studies and ambitions, I still couldn't entirely reconcile the man holding me with the reputation that had made his name a whispered warning throughout the city. "I need time," I said finally. He nodded, releasing me but staying close. "Take all the time you need. I'm a patient man, Emma." The subtle reminder of his power sent another involuntary shiver through me. "But understand this. I protect what's mine, and I've come to consider both you and Lily under that category, regardless of her paternity. We're not possessions," I said, finding my voice again. "No," he agreed. "You're much more valuable than that." With that enigmatic statement, he gathered his papers and left, pausing at the door only long enough to say, "Think about what you want, Emma, really want. Not just what you think you should want." I barely slept that night, my thoughts circling endlessly. The kiss had changed everything and nothing. It had merely brought to the surface what had been building beneath for months. A complicated attraction I'd been fighting since that first meeting in the restaurant. The next morning brought no clarity, only the practical demands of caring for an energetic 3-year-old. Lily chattered through breakfast, oblivious to my distraction, happily recounting a dream about flying cats. I was grateful for the normalcy, the anchor of routine amid my emotional turmoil. My phone remained silent all day, no messages from Alessio, no surprise visits. The space should have been a relief, but instead, I found myself checking the phone repeatedly, wondering if I'd somehow imagined the intensity of the previous night. 3 days passed this way. I attended classes, took Lily to the park, and tried to concentrate on an upcoming nursing exam. The apartment felt strangely empty without Alessio's periodic appearances, his commanding presence that somehow made even our modest living room feel like the center of his world when he was in it. On the 4th day, as I was helping Lily build a tower of blocks, there was a sharp knock at the door. My pulse quickened as I rose to answer it. But instead of Alessio, I found Marco, his head of security, standing in the hallway. "Ms. Collins," he said formally, "Mr. Vitale requests your presence, immediately." The hairs on the back of my neck rose at his tone. "What's happened?" Marco's expression remained impassive. "It's not my place to say. A car is waiting. I need to arrange childcare." "Sophia is already on her way up," he interrupted. Mr. Vitale was explicit that this couldn't wait. Fear clutched at my throat. Had Alessio changed his mind about us? About Lily? Was this the moment when his patience finally ran out? Sophia arrived minutes later, and after hurried instructions and a tight hug for Lily, I followed Marco to the waiting car. Instead of heading to Alessio's mansion as I expected, we drove to San Francisco General Hospital. My confusion mounted as Marco escorted me through the emergency department to a secure wing where 2 of Alessio's men stood guard outside a private room. "What's going on?" I demanded, refusing to take another step. "Why are we here?" Marco's stoic facade cracked slightly. "There was an attempt on Mr. Vitale's life this morning," He's been asking for you since he regained consciousness. The world tilted beneath my feet. Is he, how badly? 2 gunshot wounds. The doctors say he'll recover. Marco's jaw tightened. He was lucky. The others with him weren't. I pushed past him into the room, my heart in my throat. Alessio lay on the hospital bed, his normally vital presence diminished by the clinical setting and the various monitors tracking his vital signs. His face was pale, a bruise darkening one cheekbone, and his shoulder and abdomen were heavily bandaged. His eyes opened at my entrance, recognition and something else. Relief, flickering across his features. "Emma," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "You came." Of course I came. I moved to his bedside, fighting the urge to touch him, to reassure myself he was really alive. "What happened?" "A business disagreement that got out of hand," he said, his attempt at sardonic humor undermined by the grimace of pain that followed. "Who did this?" His eyes held mine. "Antonio Ricci." The name hit me like a physical blow. "That's impossible. He's gone." "He's back," Alessio said flatly. "Has been for at least a month, according to our intelligence. He's aligned himself with the Calabresi family in Oakland. This morning was his announcement of the partnership." My mind reeled with the implications. "He tried to kill you?" "He succeeded in killing 2 of my men." Alessio's expression hardened. "Good men with families." I sank into the chair beside the bed, trying to process this new reality. Antonio, Lily's father, had returned and immediately reignited his war with Alessio. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked finally. Alessio's gaze was steady, despite his obvious pain. "Because you and Lily are in danger now. Antonio knows about you." Cold fear washed over me. "How?" "Someone talked. It doesn't matter who. They've been dealt with." The casual reference to what was likely a brutal punishment should have disturbed me more than it did. "What matters is that Antonio knows I've been protecting his child. He'll see it as another thing to take from me." "Lily isn't a thing," I said automatically, even as terror for my daughter squeezed my chest. "To him, she is." Alessio's hand found mine, his grip surprisingly strong. "I need to move you both somewhere secure until this is resolved." "Resolved how?" His expression told me everything I needed to know. "Alessio." "No," I gripped his hand tighter. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." His voice was implacable. "He's made his choice. Now it's war." "And what about Lily? What happens if you kill her father?" Something softened in his eyes. "She already believes I'm her father in all the ways that matter. Let me make that a reality." The offer stunned me into silence. This wasn't just about protection or possession anymore. He was proposing to formally take responsibility for Antonio's child, to claim her as his own. "Why would you do that?" I whispered. "Because I love her," he said simply. "And because I love you." The words, spoken so matter-of-factly in this sterile hospital room, with the machines beeping steadily in the background, hit me with unexpected force. Not once in our entire complicated relationship had either of us spoken of love. "You don't have to say it back," he continued, reading my expression. "But I needed you to know, in case..." He glanced down at his bandaged body. "Don't," I said fiercely. "Don't talk like you're dying. We're all dying, Emma. Some of us just have more immediate deadlines." His attempt at humor fell flat, as another spasm of pain crossed his features. I stood, leaning over him carefully. "Listen to me. You're going to recover. We'll figure out how to handle Antonio. But right now, you need to rest." He caught my wrist as I started to pull away. "Stay." It was both a command and a plea, and I found I couldn't refuse either. I settled back into the chair, maintaining my hold on his hand, and watched as he drifted into a medication-induced sleep. For 3 days, I divided my time between the hospital and home, with Sophia staying with Lily while I was gone. Alessio improved steadily, his natural vitality reasserting itself despite the doctor's orders to rest. By the 4th day, he was conducting business from his hospital room, much to the medical staff's frustration. I was returning from getting coffee when I overheard a conversation from just inside his door. "We found their safe house in Sausalito," Marco was saying, The place will be minimally guarded tomorrow night while Ricci meets with the Calabrese underboss in Oakland. Good. Alessio's voice was stronger now, more like his usual authoritative tone. I want a team ready to move as soon as... I pushed the door open, interrupting them. Marco looked annoyed at the intrusion, but Alessio waved him out with a meaningful look. You're planning an attack, I said, once we were alone. He didn't bother denying it. I'm planning to end this before it escalates further, by killing Antonio. Yes. The blunt admission should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow acceptance. This was who Alessio was, a man who solved problems permanently, who protected what was his with lethal efficiency. There's something you should know, I said, making a decision that had been forming in my mind since I'd learned of Antonio's return. About Antonio and me, Alessio's expression sharpened. Go on. When I said he abandoned me after learning about the pregnancy, that wasn't entirely accurate. I took a deep breath. He did know about Lily, but he didn't leave because of her. He left because I discovered what he was planning. Alessio went very still. Explain. One night, he left his phone unlocked. I saw messages about transferring money, about meeting contacts. I confronted him, and I swallowed hard at the memory. He threatened me. Said if I told anyone what I'd seen, he'd make sure I disappeared. Then he vanished the next day. You knew he was stealing from me. Not specifically, no. I just knew he was involved in something illegal. It wasn't until later when I saw the news that I understood who he really was. Who you were. Alessio's eyes never left my face. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was afraid you'd think I was complicit, I admitted. That I'd helped him somehow. He was silent for a long moment, processing. Did you? No, I said firmly. Never. Another pause, then a slight nod. I believe you. Those 3 simple words lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. I want to help end this, I said. His eyebrows rose slightly. How? Antonio doesn't know that I know he's back, I said, the plan forming as I spoke. He might still think he can use me to get to you. Or to get to Lily. Understanding dawned in Alessio's eyes. You want to be bait. I want to be part of the solution, I corrected. For Lily's sake. For all our sakes. He studied me with new appreciation. It's dangerous. So is living in fear that he'll find us. After a long moment, Alessio nodded slowly. We'll need to be careful. Plan every detail. I know. He reached for my hand, drawing me closer to the bed. You continue to surprise me, Emma Collins. Good, I said, leaning down to brush my lips against his. I'd hate to become predictable. The plan came together quickly. 2 days later, I sat alone at an outdoor cafe near the ferry building, my heart pounding as I pretended to enjoy a late afternoon coffee. Everything had been meticulously arranged. The coincidental sighting that would bring Antonio to me, the careful surveillance maintaining a perimeter around us, the wire concealed beneath my blouse. When he finally appeared, sliding into the chair across from me as though 3 years hadn't passed, I was struck by how little he'd changed. The same charismatic smile, the same confident posture, only his eyes were different, harder, more calculating than I remembered. Emma, he said, his voice bringing back unwanted memories. You look well. I feigned shock, then fear, my hand instinctively going to my throat. Antonio? How? Did I find you? He smiled, showing too many teeth. I never really lost you, Bella. I've always kept an eye on my investments. The casual cruelty of the statement made my stomach turn. This was the man I'd once thought I loved, the father of my child. What do you want? I asked, infusing my voice with a tremor that wasn't entirely feigned. Can't a man check on the mother of his child? His gaze sharpened. How is my daughter? She's not yours, I said, with genuine vehemence. You gave up any right to her when you threatened me and disappeared. He leaned forward, his expression darkening. Careful, Emma. I'm not here to argue about parental rights. I'm here to offer you a chance to correct a mistake. What mistake? Aligning yourself with Alessio Vitale. He spat the name like a curse. Did you think I wouldn't find out that my own child is being raised under his protection? I lifted my chin. He's been more of a father to Lily than you ever were. Anger flashed in Antonio's eyes, quickly masked. He's using you, Emma. Using both of you to get to me. No, I said quietly. That's what you would do. His hand shot out, gripping my wrist painfully. You have one chance. Tell me where Vitale is recovering, and I'll let you and the child leave the city safely. Refuse, and I'll take my daughter anyway. Everything in me wanted to recoil from his touch, but I forced myself to remain still, to maintain eye contact. And if I don't know where he is, then you're of no use to me. His smile turned cruel, except perhaps as a message to him about the cost of taking what's mine. I had to buy time, to keep him talking until the signal came. Why do you hate him so much? What did he do to you? Antonio laughed, a bitter sound. What did he do? He tried to own me, just like he's trying to own you. Alessio Vitale doesn't have relationships. He has possessions. He collects people like artwork, displaying them when useful, locking them away when not. That's not true, I said, with more conviction than I'd intended. Antonio's eyes narrowed. You've fallen for him. He released my wrist with a disgusted gesture. I shouldn't be surprised. You always did have poor judgment in men. At least he never threatened to make me disappear, I countered. No, he just made you dependent on him. Tell me, Emma, could you leave him if you wanted to? Would he let you go? When I didn't answer immediately, he nodded. That's what I thought. A subtle vibration from my phone signaled that Alessio's men were in position. I took a deep breath, preparing for what came next. You're right about one thing, I said, meeting Antonio's gaze steadily. I couldn't leave him now. Because he owns you. Because I love him. The truth of the words hit me as I spoke them. Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, I had fallen in love with Alessio Vitale, with his complexity, his protection, his unexpected gentleness with Lily. Antonio's expression twisted with rage. Then you're even more of a fool than I thought. His hand moved toward his jacket, but before he could reach whatever weapon he carried, figures materialized from the surrounding tables. Marco and 3 others closed in, their movements swift and coordinated. Antonio's eyes widened in shock, then fury as he realized he'd been set up. You bitch, he snarled, lunging across the table toward me. He never reached me. Marco's fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. Within seconds, they had him restrained and were moving him toward a waiting SUV, the operation so smooth and quick that most of the cafe's patrons barely registered what had happened. My legs felt unsteady as I rose to follow, the adrenaline crash leaving me lightheaded. Marco guided me to a different vehicle. His usual stoic expression softened slightly with something like respect. Mr. Vitale is waiting, he said, opening the door for me. Alessio was at his safe house in Marine, still recovering but insisted on being present for this final confrontation. When I entered, he was standing by the window despite his injuries, his profile silhouetted against the setting sun. He turned at my entrance, his eyes quickly scanning me for any sign of harm. It's done, I said, answering his unspoken question. They have him. He crossed to me in 3 long strides, his hand cupping my face with surprising tenderness. Are you all right? Yes. I leaned into his touch, the reality of what was about to happen settling over me like a weight. What happens now? His expression turned grave. You know what happens now, Emma. I did know. I had always known that this could only end one way. Antonio had chosen his path. Had threatened not just Alessio, but Lily and me as well. In Alessio's world, there was only one response to such a threat. I want to see him first, I said. Alessio studied me for a long moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. No more. Antonio was being held in a basement room, secured to a chair, a cut on his cheekbone already bruising. He looked up as I entered, his handsome face contorted with hatred. Come to gloat? He spat. No, I said quietly, remaining by the door. I came to ask you one question. Save your breath. Did you ever care about Lily at all? Even for a moment? Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, perhaps, or just calculation. She was a complication I didn't need. And now? Now she's a pawn, just like you. He smiled bitterly. Vitale will use her the same way he uses everyone. The moment you stop being useful, you'll both be discarded. I shook my head. You're wrong about him. Am I? Ask yourself this, Emma. Does he love you for yourself, or because possessing you is the ultimate victory over me? The question struck closer to my own doubts than I wanted to admit. Goodbye, Antonio, I said, turning to leave. He'll never let you go, Antonio called after me, and one day you'll hate him for it. I paused at the door, looking back one last time at the father of my child. No, I said with quiet certainty, I won't. When I returned upstairs, Alessio was waiting, his expression carefully neutral. Did you get what you needed? Yes, I said, my decision crystallizing with each passing moment. I'm ready to go home. To Lily. He studied me carefully. You don't want to know what happens next, I agreed. I don't. Understanding passed between us, an acknowledgement of the boundaries of our relationship, of the parts of his life I would never fully participate in or condone. I'll have Marco drive you home, he said. I'll join you later. I nodded, then stepped closer, my hand resting on his chest over his heart. Alessio, what Antonio said, about why you want me, his hand covered mine. I wanted you before I knew who you were to him, he said quietly. I want you still, not as a possession, not as a victory. His dark eyes held mine as a partner. The word hung between us, laden with meaning. In his world, a partner was someone trusted, someone equal in their own domain. And Lily? I asked. I meant what I said in the hospital, he replied. I want to be her father in every way that matters. I took a deep breath, making the choice that had been forming since the moment he'd stepped into my life. Then come home to us. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Alessio held me on the sofa, his arms a sanctuary I'd never expected to find. I filed the paperwork today, he said, his voice a low rumble against my ear. For Lily's adoption, if you agree. I turned in his arms to look at him. You did? He nodded. I meant what I said, Emma. I want us to be a family, officially, legally. And what about your other business? I asked carefully. I've been considering changes for some time, he said, moving more operations legitimate. It's a process, not an overnight transformation, but... He held my gaze steadily. For you and Lily, I'm willing to try. It wasn't a promise of complete reformation, and I appreciated his honesty. Alessio Vitale would never be a conventional man, would always carry the darkness of his past and present. But he was offering what he could, a future where our family could exist in the light, even if shadows remained in other areas of his life. Yes, I said finally, to all of it. His smile, rare and genuine, transformed his face, erasing years and revealing the man beneath the carefully constructed facade of the Mafia boss. As he pulled me closer, his lips finding mine with new certainty, I realized that my greatest lie had led to my most unexpected truth. I had lied to the Mafia boss about being the father of my child, until fate brought us face to face with the truth. And in that truth, despite everything that should have kept us apart, we had found something neither of us expected to discover. A family, built not on bloodlines, but on choice, on protection, on love that defied all logical explanation. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't even an ending at all, but a beginning. Complicated, challenging, at times dangerous. But it was ours. And for now, for tonight, that was enough.